I'd like to call the Benton Harbor Area School Board meeting to order at 6:00 p.m. I would ask that you all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Mitchell. Here. Mr. Taylor.
Present.
Ms. Cass. Ms. McGowan. Here. Mrs. Momedy, present. Ms. Gully. And Ms. Seats.
Here. Madam Secretary, board, we do have a quorum. Next item on the agenda is the approval for tonight's agenda. So we'll entertain a motion at this time.
I move to approve tonight's agenda as written.
Thank you. I have a motion to approve. May I get a support, please?
Support.
I have a motion and a support. Any comments? None. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Okay, Ms. McGowan? Yes. Mrs. Momedy, yes. Ms. Seats?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
And Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. Item D on the agenda is public comment. I'd like to read this before we ask the public if they'd like to approach the board. This meeting is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. There is a time for public participation, which is now, as indicated on the agenda, item D, pursuant to Board Policy 0167.3 G2, the Board President or presiding officer may interrupt, warn, or terminate a participant's statement when the statement is too lengthy, personally directed, abusive, obscene, or irrelevant. Board Policy 0167.3 G2 also provides that the board president or presiding officer may request an individual to leave the meeting when that person behaves in a manner that is disruptive or unorderly in the meeting. And so at this time, we will open up item D for public comment. And would you please come to the table? Please give us your name and where you're residing, and then we will hear your comments at least for 3 minutes. Thank you. Yes.
My name is Cameron Hart, who is essentially City. And I'm here today to talk about my daughter, Pamela Charlotte. And this issue has come to my attention today at 1 o'clock. I got my daughter stated in the paper that she was graduating on June 8th. And I found out today from her counselor that she's not graduating at all due to 21 and a half credits. She's missing a half credit. I am here to implore my child that I know she's not perfect. I know she made some mistakes, but I'm here just to see because she just walked through the class. My child has been a student for Benton Harbor High School for all 12 years. We here supported Benton Harbor area schools, even when it's time that we didn't have certified teachers, so we was understaffed. I still supported Benton Harbor area schools. And all that I ask is that she just walked with her class. I was signing a state contract that she could finish summer school to get her high school diploma.
The child never been in trouble.
My child, no.
She always been back in all the activities.
She made
She did everything she's supposed to do.
Award this year at Benton Harbor High School. She have a gold medal that sit outside in the hallways. She has struggled with math since second grade. And this is what we come a half a short credit. As of today, I found out that she would not walk the field with her class. She's in an emotional state of mind. And along with me and her father, we going through with her. So the only thing I just ask, that she can walk with her class. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor,
I know
trustee Taylor.
we don't comment on certain items. And I know that, some of our students don't have enough credits to graduate. So I don't know the possibilities of the half a credit and then going to summer school. Would that be allowable to allow her to walk, but not receive her diploma until she finishes summer school?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Taylor. So definitely will be a board decision. According to board policy, I believe it's 5460. There is a comment section that says commencement exercises will include only those students who have successfully completed requirements as certified by the high school principal. And then it's something else in there that talks about the disciplinary piece, but she is not a disciplinary piece. It just says it successfully completed the requirements as certified by the principal. So it's a policy piece, so you all will have the option to make an adjustment. So if it's something like a half a credit up to a credit, it would allow them to walk with a signed document that says they will take that class during the summer or even start the class before summer starts. Maybe that's something we can put in place, but that would definitely be up to the board.
So, Madam President, can we have a discussion on this item after Mr. Mitchell and Mrs. Momedy speak?
Oh, absolutely, because I did want to also trustee Mitchell and then trustee McGowan.
I just want to make sure that the half credit that she needs will be offered this summer.
Yes, and I think I did speak to the mom. It is a geometry course. We are offering geometry during the summer. It is offered, and it's more than we have about 7 students in this situation that is like a half a credit.
Trustee Momedy.
Okay, I have concerns. Number one, then a half credit becomes, well, we're only a credit short. Number two, the principal of the high school stands there at that podium and says, I have certified according to Michigan law that all of these students have achieved all of these credits. Now, I believe these students and parents should have been notified that this was a possibility before this point. But let's not go down the slippery slope of changing the rules at the last minute. Because then the next time it's, well, you did it for somebody else. Now, why don't we do it just for 1 credit? And I don't believe in the slippery slope.
Trustee Taylor.
So, Mrs. Momedy, I understand your reservations, and you're absolutely correct, but I would say that how does a parent get a notice several days before graduation that my child only has 1 credit, half a credit, right? So I think sometimes, we have to look at ourselves. This district dropped the ball. Maybe second semester our counselors did their due diligence. We could have did this online or something like that. But I would say that even in the comments of the principal, when he says, principal such and such certify these students, he could say, I certify X amount of students, right? With the exception of 7 or 8 students, whatever that may be.
Superintendent Robinson.
So I did talk to Ms. Harden, and she expressed that she had not received any notification. So I went and spoke to her. I called the counselor, and it is kind of like her word against their word, or whatever it might be. So they're saying that there were letters sent out to all families notifying them that their child may have some credits that they need to make sure that they get before they are eligible for graduation. So they're saying, the counselor is saying that their letters were sent out, and mom is saying she never received the letter. So, and that could be, she never could have received the letter. I also asked, is there calls given out? There was a robocall, I know, given to the high school that says by June 1st, all credits must be in. So that was a notice there. The counselor also stated that the teachers have spoken to the students on numerous occasions regarding their lack of work and where they need to go to make sure that they have the work in order to pass the course. So I have spoken to, so somewhere, somehow, someone failed. Either the communication was not said to the parent from the child with urgency, or the calls were not received, the robocalls were not received, and or the letters were not received by the parents. Nonetheless, next year, what I am requiring, is just spoken with Mr. Adams, that those letters, whatever those letters are, be sent certified mail so that we have some sort of signature on that. Also, that starting in fall, November, that those counselors review the credits, and we've said this before, so we're gonna have to find somebody to monitor this, that they're meeting with the seniors and also calling the parents. So I need them to make some personal phone calls, and if that's not the case, if they can't get in touch with the parents, then making some personal home visits, some visits to the parents as well. So, and I spoke to Ms. Harden and apologized, because there is a breakdown in whatever system or lack of system that we have. And like I said, there are 7 other students in this situation.
7 total.
7, what I've been told.
Okay.
But they have a
7
credit
total,
or
have a credit.
a credit. And I will also note, I was called about an hour ago from the high school principal, and there are a number of graduates or seniors who will not graduate. So I do have that number as well, because of an eligibility. And that total number is 27.
So the students were.
Do you mind using the microphone, Mr. Jones? Thank you.
So the students themselves were made aware by the teachers and possibly the counselors that they did not have enough credits to graduate. So this really was not a surprise to the individual students.
Correct.
Any more comments? If no more comments, I believe that superintendent will have the conversation with the parents after she gets either a consensus or up or down from the board on how they want to address the matter.
Does it have to be done tonight?
Graduation is this, so I think it should be. I mean, so you have, it's up to the board, but we need to give her, Ms. Robinson, some type of direction. And if it has it ever been done before?
I don't know, maybe.
Not to our knowledge, nobody has meant to doing it before.
Has it ever been done in the state of Michigan before?
I'm sure.
Yes, actually, I called a couple of other districts and people I know from outside of this district and outside of this area. Yes, they do have a walk policy within their board. And so it's a half a credit up to a credit. If they are missing that, they are able to walk.
Okay, so it's called the walk policy. Do you have a copy or a paragraph out of that policy? And is there something that can be put in writing that guarantees? I mean, walking is one thing, receiving a diploma is another. So a lot of times walking is just an act of, it's just a show, really. It's the diploma. So I think let's look at the walk policy. If you can get that to us, even while we're here tonight, we get a chance to put it into an email. We can look at it. If that's what the board wants to look at tonight, we can either up or down, adding the walk policy within the policy with a guarantee that half a credit is made up and successfully completed. If that's how we want to move forward. Mr. Mitchell.
Well, to Ms. Lombardy's point, I remember for years and years and years. There were students who walked, and they did not receive a diploma until book fines were paid, until all the internal things were done. So it's not a precedence that we're setting here.
And I do know in other districts that used to be, I don't know what, until certain things were satisfied,
Exactly.
but you could walk and not get paid. So I think if you send us that, and we can look at that, and we can, in our email, and see, and then we can have the conversation. Trustee McGowan.
But our policy doesn't allow for that. If what Ms. Robinson read, and if we are going to follow our policy, then we need to follow our policy. And if we need to change it, then that's something that we should consider for next year. And not, again, just change, quickly. And, we don't know what spider effect is.
Again, if you would send us that, then we can still, if we can look at it, then the board can decide how we want to do it. It's an up or down. If we want to make an amendment to the policy tonight, then we'll have the option to do that, trustee. And if the board just deems it not appropriate at this time, then we won't. Trustee Mommy, you wanted to comment?
And what is our policy on changing policies? Isn't there a process for us to go through on that also? There used to be.
I think the policies just go through the Neola because we don't have that power anymore. So when we change it, it's just us changing it. It gets sent to Neola. They put it in the policy book.
Okay, so before we leave, the board needs to come to some consensus whether we want to visit this or not visit it. And again, we'll see what the board wants to do before we leave. Anyone else in the public would like to address the board at this time?
Good evening, Madam President and rest of the board. My name is Gary Edwards, President of Bracken Edwards Youth Organization, also Vice President of Park Conservancy. But I come to you this evening on behalf of Cynthia Calover. And she would like to she has secured money for the scholarship for students, and these students are not those who would typically go to a four-year institution, or maybe there might be some who might not even be able to 2 years. But perhaps someone might want to be a mechanic, construction, whatever. She would like to set up this scholarship through the high school here, and a little bit of how it would go, just say for instance, I'm a senior, I want to be a mechanic. That scholarship will be paid directly to the school, not to the student or parent or anyone else, but that would go straight to the school. To do it more in detail, then I might possibly give you the wrong information. But if you need more, we'd like to set up a meeting. I can give you her email, her phone number. She would have been here tonight, but this was a last minute thing, and she was leaving town for the weekend. But she did give me the liberty to pass her information, or even if you'd like to set up a meeting, either way. So any questions?
We generally don't speak back, but I think this would be a good opportunity if there are questions, because the board and the district does welcome scholarships other than the normal scholarships. So does anybody want to ask any particular questions concerning Ms. Kolovich's offer to give students a scholarship for mechanic, hairdressers, and barbers, or whatever? Anybody comment? Or I do believe we can set up something next couple of weeks when our CFO is available. Yes, Mr. Taylor.
So what organization does she represent? I mean, is funding coming from her, or is it coming from an outside organization that she works with?
It's coming from her, and the name of the organization is the Resilience. Actually, they put up the piece in front of, across from City Hall, the 911 Resilience.
Yes, trustee Mitchell.
I could refer, gentleman to this superintendent. Is that her?
Well, that's the process, but, we just, again, along with our CFO, to make sure that what is dedicated is allocated.
Correct.
And that there is a line item for those particular funds, so that whoever gives us funds knows that through our CFO, that's how, the district is, giving out the funds. So, yeah, with the superintendent, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Mitchell.
That's it.
Okay, thank you so
All
much.
right, thank you all.
Good evening, Madam President and board members. My name is Rick Compton. I'm the CEO at Riverwood Area Mental Health Center. I was saddened earlier, again last week, to hear that the Benton Harbor School Board was considering the ending of the mental health portion of the gang prevention grant. For those of you to review it, Riverwood invented 4 mental health therapists and staff in the Benton Harbor elementary schools and middle schools as part of the grant, and has also worked with Benton Harbor schools on mental health first aid and other programs through the partnership agreement. Over the last 8 months, the Riverwood therapists have provided screening, assessments, therapy, referrals, behavioral interventions to over 128 students in the elementary and the middle school. They've also provided psychosocial support to teachers and to families in the Benton Harbor schools. And currently, there are over 40 children receiving therapy through the mental health therapists at the Benton Harbor schools. I understand the great challenges that the board faces. I understand the need for other programs and safety, but I certainly hope that the board will consider this program. I have with me tonight Darren Parker, who is the supervisor of the school program, and he can review, if you don't mind, some of the outcomes so far from the 8 months of the gang prevention grant.
Hello, everyone. As I stated, my name is Darren Parker, school-based supervisor. So we received 128 referrals. Out of those 128 referrals, 21 parents declined to participate. 19 were already receiving services within the community. 18 were referred to a community provider, meaning their level of care required more than what we could provide within the school setting. 38 became active at this time. We were able to successfully complete 5 treatment plans. 22 parents did not respond to the referral that we received. 5 are currently pending. From the month of November until the month of April, we utilized the Power School disciplinary laws, and at ACA, 70% decrease in referrals of students who participated in the school-based program. At MLK, 40% decrease in disciplinary loss of students who participated in the school-based program. And at Hall, 30% decrease of disciplinary loss of students who participated in the program. We currently have 21 parents asking that their children continue to receive support throughout the summer months. And I believe 8 are pending. We also have a therapist who provides support directly, Mrs. Felicia Howell. I want to share a story or two about her.
Hi, my name is Felicia Howell. I'm the school-based therapist at MLK. I currently do assessments, I do requested services, I do therapy, psychoeducation, and crisis interventions. I also do the psychoeducation classes within the classroom, which helps the entire school with behavior, bullying, eloping, and any other thing that the teachers are requesting need to talk with the kids throughout the classroom. I am saddened that this program will possibly end. I just had a couple of students that walked up to me recently and said, and this is not a consumer that I work with, this is a consumer that is in the classroom that has attended a psychoeducation class, and we were talking about triggers to lower their anger, and she walked up to me and said she forgot her triggers. She could not remember her triggers and ended up getting into a little confrontation and got suspended. That let me know that this program was working. I also had a student actually today was attempting to fight and just happened to see me in the hallway and decided to walk away. And this was a third grader, which is our most problematic children. So I am just saddened that this will probably end because we have built relationships with not only the children, the parents, and the teachers. And I am just hoping that this can continue so these children can get the help that they need so they can further their education and be productive in this life.
If I may, I would like to have a story that was shared with me by Felicia. She was working with a student in the month of December, could not stay in the school setting a full day. This student was placed on half a days. After working with Mrs. Howe, this student was able to not only complete her treatment plan, but remain in school and bring her grades to a satisfactory level. And this is just one of the stories that I've heard from various therapists providing support within the school setting. I have another story, if I may. There was a student who was in a cafeteria, and sadly, another student spit on the student. This student walked out the cafeteria who had a reputation of fighting on a regular basis. Walked out the cafeteria and appeared upset as the therapist was walking by and shared what had happened and how he decided to use what she told him to do, and that's breathe, walk away, and count. She allowed the student to go to her office with her and punch a pillow and then return later to the cafeteria to finish out his day. She shared with the student, can I share this with your grandfather that you was able to walk away from a fight? The student initially declined, but she was able to convince the student to allow her to share this information with his grandfather. The student allowed her to share this information, and the grandfather allowed the student to go over to his uncle's house over the weekend as a reward. Sadly, this grandfather also told the student to, on the playground, fight the student back because you don't allow anyone to hit you. 2 weeks later, this student told the therapist, I have not got into a fight. I'm listening to what you have shared with me, although he was told by his grandfather to retaliate. So this is showing that the information that the therapists are providing are making a difference in these students' lives.
Are there any questions of the Riverwood staff at this time concerning their participation in the Benton Harbor schools? What is the difference in what you're doing and interventionists are doing within the district? I did hear intervention. So what actual service, as far as mental health services, do you think you just addressed to us? What part of mental health service was that you just talked to us about?
The therapists are providing psychotherapy. This entails using various therapy, whether it's cognitive behavioral therapy, solution focus, based on the needs of the students. They're also providing crisis intervention. This entails if a student is in crisis, whether the student is not able to regulate their emotions, threatening suicide, or attempting to harm another student, they're providing therapy in the form of interventions that, guide the staff in regards to this student should be referred to a hospital. This is a technique you use when a student is behaving in this fashion. In addition to that, they are providing psychoeducation. This is a skill-based process which teaches the student how to deal with various situations, whether it's anger management skills, whether it's conflict resolution. This is provided throughout the school-wide, any classroom setting where there's a opportunity to provide the support, the students are receiving this from the school-based therapist. Treatment is provided from parent permission. So we require parental consent to provide treatment, which entails psychotherapy, interventions related to student being able to deal with trauma that they're not having to address in a normal setting, whether it's with an interventionist or a school staff member. The therapists are providing treatment that addresses trauma, whether it's student has been exposed to violence, things of that nature. So it's treatment in the form of psychotherapy.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board at this time? Okay. If not, thank you all so much for presenting to the board this evening.
Thank you for your time.
We're still at public comment. Item D on the agenda. Is there anyone else in the public that would like to wish to address the board at this time? You may come forward to the table. Yes.
Madam President, was this presentation in regards to the question that was asked of administration a few months ago regarding the gang prevention and Riverwood?
Yes, so it's somewhat. So I did speak with the Riverwood, some of their staff last week and expressed just concern about the financial piece and so letting them know that as this contract stands that we would recommend and send them an official letter to end the contract under the safety grant. So in that there were some numbers that did come up, and I don't know if Mr. Deere and Mr. Parker talked about the funding piece that you shared, and someone shared with me how much we are saving, considering that some of the charges are being charged back to Medicaid. So we have 400 and something, over $400,000 allocated for the services this year. And right now we're less than half or near half of spending that because Medicaid is picking up some of the charges. So it's not as expensive as was allocated.
Well, that's
That was a big question.
That's the question that I had asked, originally, because the children were Medicaid eligible in the first place. So how did this balance out? Okay.
So we are saving some money, and considering what the safety grant can pay for, we are considering some other options for use of that money. But I expressed to the group that was there that we could also possibly fund these services through another funding source, such as 31A for at-risk.
Thank you.
Okay, is your question satisfied?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else in the audience wish to address the board at this time? If not, we're going to close item D on the agenda and go to number 2, the presentation from Avonmarsh plans for the skills center.
Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Carvin Dela Cruz, and I'm an architect with Avonmarsh.
And I'm Matt Nuremberg, architectural designer with Avonmarsh.
So what you have before you this evening is a draft in-progress facilities assessment for the Skills Center. On behalf of the district, we took a look at basically the existing conditions that are present in the facility and just do an overarching assessment. So what you have here before you this evening is a draft in progress of that. We'll spend about 10 or 15 minutes just guiding the board through this packet. Essentially, the introduction articulates the purpose of determining the physical conditions as well as the tasks and the items that we went through to do the assessment. We'll walk through these briefly. On page 2, kind of the overarching theme was on late February of this year, Evan March staff conducted a site survey and evaluation of the physical facility, walked through the exterior and interior. We'll walk through those in a moment. And then also that there's a plan in your packet as well. So in general, we looked at not just the exterior with the roof as well as the walls and conditions of that, but also investigated the mechanical system and the areas basically that are fine and areas that might need repair in order to give an educated analysis for the board members to make a decision on the future of this facility. So in general, the mechanical equipment, it has exceeded its life expectancy. There have been some repairs in portions of the facility, air conditioning and so on and so forth. But by and large, it has reached and exceeded its useful life. Other areas of concern would be the roof. And one of the things that we'll take a look at, what we have on the screen right now, is obviously the floor plan. And part of the discussion this evening is not only to look at the existing conditions, but also have continuing dialogue with the board and decision makers to see what may be future life of this facility. So, but the goal tonight is just to do an overview, for instance. But essentially, we'll just walk through this facility. Over on the upper right-hand corner, a series of offices that are, again, have the upgraded air conditioning system. But also on this portion, which is in the tan area, we'll have some photographs momentarily. But this is in a future, or sorry, a past life, had automotive as well as a lift that's currently in the corner. And then portions of the ground currently have storage facilities as well as in this lower portion. So we'll kind of walk through the building as we move along. The next page looks at just some cost evaluation here on page 4, and we'll come back to this towards the end of our discussion. But what we found, and the drawings in front of you in the booklet has the images as well, as you can see that isn't quite as dark as what's on the screen. But there are areas where on this lower left-hand portion, shows up located here. There was some cracking on the exterior wall. In certain cases, that there has been some settling in the foundation, as well as just some leaks that are evident on the roof. And that could be evident here, where you could actually see the stain marks, where there's some water intrusion coming from the roof itself. These are just images of the exterior, again, on the back side of the building, showing some of the exterior mechanical equipment, as well as some areas of concrete in disrepair. So the next series of slides, we went room by room, and as you can see, this is basically looking at the room number that relates back to the plan, as well as the current square footage, the type of facility, type of space it is, whether it be a storage, mechanical, office, or classroom. And then in the next line, it says visual conditions, A being good, and B being fair, and C being poor. So it kind of looks at that just as a ballpark visual item. And then if there are furniture present, for instance, you could see here in this line item under the west woodworking, it has an opportunity to have 50 seats in that. And that's important because as we look at this space and what future use could it be, then the board can determine if that were to be a classroom, say, it could hold 30 students or it could hold 50 students as part of the conversation. And then as well as if there's any amenities, types of furnishings, types of technology, what sort of lights might be present there, and then the mechanical system. And at the end, we have this matrix that looks really at the tier of $1 to $1,000, tier 2 might be 1,001 to 7,000, just to get a ballpark barometer of what conditions and facility upgrades might be needed. And so that's the series you have before you on page 10 and 11 as well. The next series of slides, starting on page 12, really look into a little bit more in depth of each of the rooms. So again, these room numbers correlate to the floor plan that's on page 3. And you can see, for instance, on this upper right-hand corner, there's some disrepair in the walls. By and large, one of the things that we discuss is there are portions of this building that could be deemed to be reused for classrooms. Might it be the entire structure? It might just be portions. So again, that's part of the discussions. Therefore, we went room by room and really did an assessment of the physical conditions of each space. And I won't labor to read each line, but just some highlights here and there. So the other thing, for instance, is the conditions that as evidence of some water penetration through the roof. And you can see here as evidenced by some of the roof tiles, so on and so forth. The next pages just has some images of the equipment. Again, in some cases, it's very, it's in decent conditions. In some cases, it reaches its useful life. In the next series of slides here, again, just looking at the physical conditions of the space and seeing where might there be the need to have immediate repair, i.e. kind of the roof, so that we can really button up the shell and core of the building, as they say. Again, some other images of roof leaks and things of that nature, as well as other penetrations on the lower right-hand corner of page 18. Just some other water intrusion. The other areas for discussions would be where in room 125 and 124, which could be the welding area as well as the automotive suite. And then the next page on 20, room 123 for the garage, for instance. So there is an existing trench in the areas that potentially could hold and has held the automotive portion. So really being mindful of obviously the image here on the upper top, middle top portion is the trench drain that is filled with dirt. It could be cleaned out and repaired, of course, but we wanted to, again, document existing conditions. Moving on to page 22 and 23. Again, it's 23, for instance, room 118, which is currently a storage, could be repurposed to a classroom. It's one of the larger size spaces in the facility. It could be quartered off, it could be cut in half, and a classroom that could readily seat 30 people, for instance. So again, in the matrix, it articulates that. We'll look at page 27, because this is one thing to note. What we're seeing on the upper left-hand corner, the image there on 27, is this is a transition between the corridor and the restrooms. You can see here it's about 1.5 inches lip, which if this were to be repurposed into a classroom space would need to be remedied, obviously, for ADA considerations to no less than 1/2 inch, for instance. We'll move on to page 29. And again, some of the existing conditions here that were evidenced was just typical water penetration and intrusion into the space. So, obviously it is being utilized and used as storage as well as office spaces up in the upper right-hand corner of the corner. And then just again, some images of the existing conditions in the corridor. So what the series of slides towards the last portion of this booklet indicates the office spaces that's being used. So if I could turn the board's attention back to page 3 and 4. So we'll look at the floor plan. Again, page 3, how this is laid out right now is that the parking lot is located on the right-hand side. This is where staff would enter through currently. And then this was the room, the 118, that's currently storage that could be repurposed. So one of the things that we wanted to look at in page 3 is really a matrix of, again, kind of an in-progress dialogue, a first snapshot of cost. And if you add up these numbers in addition to the roof, we're looking about $150,000 to $175,000 to button up the building, to close it, to work through the tuck pointing and some of the penetrations, as well as the roof. So, you know, it's to that order of magnitude. Now, looking at the interior, for instance, there's been discussions of adding welding and so on and so forth. That's part of the dialogue with this group moving forward to see, you know, should we investigate certain portions of the building to be repurposed? What magnitude should that be? But we wanted to present this in-progress document to the board this evening to, again, as a catalyst for future discussions, that you would have something in your possession to as you dialogue in this process.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Any questions from the board? Mr. Taylor?
No questions. I would say good work. Thank you, sir. Because now we have a roadmap, right, to see whether it's use the entirety, section off, or if the group's desired disposal, right? So now we can just see what.
Absolutely. It's really arming you folks in the decision-making capacity to have something in front of you as a conversation starter, as well as looking at particular areas that you may or may not want to focus on. So it's really arming you with that information.
Explain tier 1, tier 2, tier 4.
Sure. Absolutely. So within the, we'll just move to one of these matrices. So for instance, if we look at room 124, we say, well, tier 4 could be the electrical service panels should be replaced, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, all of that work could be in the excess of $20,000. So if you look at tier 4, it's kind of $20,000 plus. I'm looking now on page 10. So for instance, on page 10, if you look at room number 20, and room number 120 on page 10, and you go across and say tier 1, doors and hardware need to be replaced. Well, the order of magnitude with that is really in the $1,000 to $1,000 range for replacing. So it kind of gives an order of magnitude when we're having these discussions. It still obviously needs to be honed in and dialed in. But this is, again, an overarching assessment. So once the board determines, yes, let's consider moving forward with X, Y, and Z, then if it's at the board's decision or pleasure to create a set of documents that then we could go out to bid with contractors and really see what those include.
Because I see it on page 10, like room 117, electrical and service panels should be replaced. It's just because they're old or they're inadequate or?
Well, it's really dials back to what could that purpose in the future need to be repurposed. So for instance, that storage room right now, if it were to be converted into a classroom space. So the code in Michigan would need to have a certain proper light level, certain electrical panels, as well as the light fixture would need to be replaced. So it's really an order of magnitude, and part of the reason why it's in that tier is if that were to happen, That's the magnitude we're looking at.
A lot of the existing infrastructure is outdated. The electrical services, wiring, the fuse panels, all do need to be replaced in those areas. Mechanical equipment in much of the building is beyond its service life. And depending on the extent of the building that's affected by repairs, will determine that level, whether it's, it could easily climb into the hundreds of thousands of dollars for mechanical repair alone, depending on the magnitude of the building that's being affected. So
Also, there's a portion of the facility that have fire suppressions, and there's portions of the building that don't have fire suppression. So for instance, sprinkler systems, and we'll call it the panhandle over here. Obviously, if that were a section that was determined to be repurposed, then fire suppression would need to be installed in that location.
and depending on how it's repurposed, if the existing fire suppression system just needed to be modified, is it able to accommodate the modifications that are necessary?
Thank you.
Anyone else from the board have any questions? Because we know this did originate, I believe, in February when we talked about welding, possible welding and automotive taking place in that facility. So, again, thank you for a good job. The board will be looking at it in more detail as we move forward. Thank
Please
you.
feel free to contact us with any questions if you have.
Thank you so much. Next item on the agenda is number 3, Kim Lindsay, financial report, please.
Boy, it looks like we've got a lot of stuff on the agenda here tonight. The first item, board, is your normal monthly finance packet. This is for the month of April. And just as an aside, I think we got May done late this afternoon too, so I can put that one out to you guys later in the week if you want to see that one as well. But the summary, general fund. Oh, we got our screen.
Get the screen off here.
Did you just take our screen hostage?
There you go. Momentarily, yes, sir.
All right, so our normal monthly packet here, the first tab is the general fund summary of disbursements for the month. So as you can see, in the month of April, just under $600,000 of vendor payments were made. And you can see the couple items that we always list out separately for you there, the attorney fees, the stuff that was paid to grant vendors and such. The next 2 tabs are the capital projects funds. And there was really no activity in either of those funds for the month except for interest earnings. The check register itself is on the next tab. And kind of our normal vendor report for the month. There are a couple of items that are highlighted in black. Those are the items over $50,000 Treasury was wanting us to show those separately. Draw attention to them. So just for your information, the Connexus check of the $60,298, that is the adult ed program. So that was their draw through the first part of April. The total program this year is just over $70,000. So we've sent them their check and we are drawing that check now from Calhoun ISD as our reimbursement. So it passes through us. You can also see some of our larger vendor payments in there. EduStaff is a large because of our number of contracted staff, substitutes, security monitors, all kinds of folks, secretaries. We've been talking about contracts quite a bit over the last month and a half. The year-to-date budget report on the last tab. So we're through April, 10 months of the school year. You'll see a few of the items that have some coloration as you look at the year-to-date as a percent of the budget. I just want to point out a few of those. In the revenue section at the top, you'll see we've only drawn 31% of our federal revenue so far to date. Last Thursday, when I was here, we drew $1.4 million down on Title I and Title II. So that's finally the accounting is straightened around enough where we can make the draws. There are still significant grant dollars to be drawn. GSRP still has $450,000 that needs to be drawn. Hopefully that'll happen in the next week. As I said, we've got the adult ed dollars to come back. The payments to Raymond that are being reimbursed by Treasury, those are up to them now. We should have those shortly after their visit yesterday. We got that straightened around. So there's still lots of money to be had there. On the state line, back in March, there was a pretty significant adjustment that came through on state aid status related to old property tax tribunals and reversals to the tune of $305,000. So that number in the state area has been affected by that somewhat. Pretty kind of a material number. The other side of that is this week we received the revolving payment from the county for our property taxes. I'm pleased to say that that number was significantly more than it's been in the past. So we've collected the majority of our property taxes. The ones that we can't be paid for by the county are the delinquent personal property taxes. The local units have to chase those down. But overall, it was a really nice return back. The check was north of 650,000. Also in the local area, not on this month, but next, when you see an insurance reimbursement check from the close up of the work comp fund from a few years back, will be sitting in your revenues for local sources for the month of May. On the expenditure side of things, the items that are highlighted in green mean we're under budget in those areas. The business services line, 250X there, that's the business office. And of course, you were without CFO for a bit of time there. And the timing of, because a lot of the employees in that area are contracted through RESA, their invoice came through in the month of May. So you'll see that number get itself back into normalcy in the month of May. Central services, the same thing. A lot of that is contracted through RESA. And like I said, that bill, which was a very large bill, came through in the month of May. Community services, pretty good size underspending there so far, and that's mainly related to Title I. So that's the parent involvement piece in Title I, and many of those activities have just taken place in the last couple of weeks. So all in all, when you look at the bottom, for the year to date, it shows us $660,000 in the hole, revenue to expense. But remember, we haven't drawn those federal grant dollars. So we're still in good shape on our budget. That would be an actually positive number of about $800,000 or $900,000 after the draw. And the main reason why we're okay in the budget is because we still are not fully staffing all of our positions, with our own employees. Okay. Questions on the board financial report this morning?
Okay. I am looking forward to someday before I am off of the board, getting that summer school instruction expense straightened out where it doesn't show that we are 665% over.
Yeah, it's all because of the Title I budget amendment piece isn't reflected in the budget at the moment. This is still the winter budget.
Okay, now these others that are red, such as health services, other pupil services, instructional technology, and instructional staff other. Are there funds coming in for those at some point?
Yeah, all of that relates to Title I expenditures. The Title I budget wasn't properly reflected in the amendment. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Every one of those lines. Other questions? All right, a couple other items in my normal reporting. The utility report. And Gail is really trying to chase down some of these as well. We had a small fire in the building along Main Street. As you go out of town, I remember leaving here on Thursday or Friday afternoon and seeing a fire truck there. And they think maybe that was caused by electrical. And we're trying to figure out why electrical service is onto the building, but maybe it's only because of the security system that's there. That the building is vacated. So Gail's trying to chase down that stuff to make sure we're not still having utilities turned on in buildings that really are serving no purpose. But all utilities are also coming in right in line with the budget. Credit card charges, that's a really small report as far as looking at it visually on the computer. So these are related to payments made on the credit cards in the month of April, so the mainly charges from February and March. Lots of activity. Lots of activity.
And when will you be handing out the magnifying glasses so we can start reading these?
We should get you the paper copies. I'll bring you a paper copy next week. And this, I look at the same, that's so small. All right, so that's the regular finance report. I also have, yes, sorry.
With the credit card, are these all approved purchases before they're made, or people using the card and then, saying that they used it?
No, they have to come and get the card.
Okay.
So for Gail to give the card up, the building principal has to have signed off on the check request or whatever the event is. Like right now, there's been a lot of year-end events, like graduation things that need to be paid for and stuff. But yeah, those are all, they have to come get the card.
And we know what they're using it for?
Yeah.
And it's been approved.
Went through that this morning. She wouldn't give up the card because it wasn't an approval.
Good.
Also have 3 items for you. The first 2 relate to some bids. The very first one, the CTE RFP for the TV studio camera bids. Back in the early in the month of May, the Botech area put out a bid for new TV studio camera for the studio in the high school. The funding for this is coming from our VOCAD added cost, of which this year we have an allocation of almost $84,600. So the idea here is, look, money is already in our hand, we need to spend it, or we have to send it back to RESA. So those bids came in, they were opened last Wednesday. The summary you see here, we have 2 bidders, Town and Country Technologies, the other was MKE SVT, one of the vendors out of Zealand, the other one Kazoo. The low bid was Town and Country Technologies. Mr. Turner came over to review those bids to make sure they met his specifications as far as the equipment. There was also a list of things in the bids that the bidders had to comply with, and they did comply with all of those. After he looked at the bids, his recommendation was to go with the low bid from Town and Country for the $43,709. He indicated the technology was very similar between the 2, but the use of the Panasonic equipment as far as the camera allows him to do stuff in 4K. So those of you with your TVs, the newer TVs have the 4K technology. So he said that's the one that he would recommend we go with. So the finance department would also recommend that same bid. What we need to do is get the purchase order out there so that the equipment can be into the district before year end, so we make sure that we meet the requirements for that to be approved. Okay, so I bring that to you tonight. The second one is related to our lease of our copiers. And Gina Lovelace really did this whole process. I just kind of got brought in here at the end as we need to present to the board. So the copier lease is currently with Adams Remco. It expires at the end of June. From what I can tell, we have 11 copiers throughout the district of 2 types. About half of them are Konica Minoltas, and I'm not sure what the other half are. Gina went through the process of actually calling around on the equipment, and what she found was that on the state of Michigan's cooperative website called My Deal, she was able to find a very favorable lease arrangement for all Konica Minolta equipment. So the use of the My Deal website is like using RIMSA from the RESA, where you don't have to go through the formal bid process. It's already been done. So I was going to look back at our purchasing policy to make sure we had not violated that. So Gina is suggesting that we go with Konica Minolta. The savings is about $600 to $700 a month. And the other, the Remco company was actually charging us for additional usage beyond the volume that's in the lease. This lease doesn't have volume requirements in it. It's a 4-year lease, guaranteed to stay at the same rate. And I can't, Sue and I talked about this afternoon. The agreement, as you look at the document that's in there, actually says you could renew for 2 more 4-year terms and continue to pay the same rate and replace the equipment each 4 years. Anyway. So I would also, on this one, recommend that we do go with Konica Minolta for all the district copiers. We would all now have one type of equipment done by the same supplier. These copiers also are able to be used. Your fob is able to be used, so we can start tracking usage to find out where we're using just a ton of stuff and making a bunch of copies that maybe we shouldn't be doing. So that would be something that the business office can now monitor. So bring that to you as well. We'll just need to make a decision and get that out to them so they can, so that the lease document will have to come back to the board and get approved. We'll probably also have to send that to treasurer. And then lastly, board, I talked a couple of meetings ago about our realtor who had, and I think you guys had seen the offer some time ago, maybe March, and then was renewed again in April. He reached out again because the people are very interested in the North Shore property. I've attached the purchase agreement and also some notes from the potential buyers. And I know one of the concerns of the board was selling ability that could be used by another educational institution such as a charter inside the district's boundaries. So Mr. and Mrs. Davis are community members. They want to make that building into town home condominium style units. My guess is the old building would come down and they would just use the real estate. But the offer is $155,000 for that property. And I just need direction from the board as to whether you want us to pursue that and sign the purchase agreement and make that happen. The other side of this, and I posed it to Shelby when she was here yesterday from Treasury, was Mr. Connors told us we could reopen the real estate plan and just selectively sell pieces of real estate. I didn't get she said she needed to look at the document. So I'm going to see her again tomorrow at a conference, so I'm going to bring that up again. But if you're interested, I want to let the realtor know so that he can get back with the entities and see if we can move forward. It'll take a while to close it, but.
I have a question,
Yes.
Madam President.
Certainly.
So have you heard back from any other interested party for the Riverview?
I have not, and it's the same realtor.
Okay.
So right now that building is really full of a lot of stuff. I think that may be hindering us a bit from getting that one moved, because I think that's probably a pretty viable piece of property.
And I know we had interest in it, so
Yes.
I would reach out to the realtor, let's make the money, right, and put the money
Absolutely.
back into our finances.
Yeah.
So do you need a consensus?
No, I'll reach back out to them. So the next action item you guys would have is if we're ready to go, when the purchase agreement time comes, I'll bring that purchase agreement to the board. Makes sense?
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, no more questions from the board. No more questions. Item 4 on the agenda, human resources, Ms. Baptist, please.
Good evening, board. I am actually going to put a pause on the PE teacher for just a moment. Still waiting to hear back from a few references. So excited to bring that to you guys pretty soon. And instead, we'll go to my employment updates memo, where you will see listed our current openings across the district based on the final staffing plan that we have presented. And then I just added an update on where we are with a few key interviews and the process for those in terms of first, second round. Teacher positions are an ongoing process as we screen candidates and get them scheduled. The other 4 are going to be more set in stone, as you see there. And then to highlight a few of the activities we've been heavily involved in, apart from interviewing. We've sent out letters of intent to all district staff, week before last, so that staff know their intended placement for the 18-19 school year. And also summer school contracts have gone out to staff who will be serving our students over the summer break as well. We're doing some preliminary investigation into having our files in a paperless system, going paperless in the HR department, which will help our formatting and flow. So looking at a few systems for that. And as we get further information, definitely will bring those updates to you.
Are there any questions for Ms. Baptist from the board? Yes, trustee McGowan.
Has there been any indication from staff that are retiring or leaving?
Not beyond what I've presented to you. We do have 2 retirements. I think I brought those in another board meeting. I don't have any resignations as of now. In the letters, as we're getting them back, we have a section at the bottom where they indicate I do plan to return, I'm unsure, or no, I'm not going to return. So far, 1 unsure, and 1 no, I will not be returning.
Any more questions from the board for Ms. Baptist? Thank you, Ms. Baptist, for the update.
Madam President, I'm sorry. I want to just ask one question to Mr. Lindsay, so I apologize because I know it's out of order. But you mentioned $84,000. We got to spend it, send it back to Lisa. We only spent $43,709 for the camera.
There's some other expenditures that have happened, so we're not short the whole $40,000.
Okay, so we're going to spend that 84.
We are working very diligently to spend it all.
That's all we want.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Robinson, item number 5.
Good evening, board. So item number 5, the first we have summer book giveaway. If you click on the staff report, you have some details there. So through our title dollars and in an effort to utilize some of those funds this summer, we are wanting to have a summer book giveaway in the parks along with the lunch. Lunch is being served to students. This was purchasing books was one of the recommendations that was given to us by our Title I consultant. So listed there is just some information regarding the book giveaway, how much we're planning on spending for those books, and then how much we're planning on spending for a person to actually be in the parks during that time for the summer book giveaway. And all of these will be paid, all of this will be paid for and has been approved by our Title I consultant.
We can start with trustee Mitchell at this end, and then we'll just work our way around.
Just to go in conjunction with this particular staff report, Superintendent, I have not seen nor has the board approved a summer lunch program as of yet. I know that the sites have to be approved by USDA and by the municipalities where we're going to operate. So I just want to make sure that we are doing the right advertising and notification as required by law, and that the board approves the program. And this should be done in the month of June.
Okay, we will review our select number to get that done.
Is it a full lunch or is it just a snack that's happening?
It's a lunch and it's usually a snack that is provided.
And the hot meals are different than according to the department standards. Mr. Taylor, you yielding to?
I'm yielding. Come back to you.
Well, 2 things. That salary seems kind of high for what they're doing.
Is that the hourly
Well, that's
rate?
the hourly rate for teachers. This is certified staff.
So like the summer school teachers would be paid $30 an hour?
Right.
Okay.
But this is not someone who's teaching.
They're still under the teacher contract. So any teacher who's working during the summer, they're off with that. And that's more than that. But all of our teaching staff, if they're working extra or receiving or working in the summer, they do get $30 an hour. And this total salaries for 11 weeks would be that amount when you include benefits, because we also have to include benefits in that.
I realize that. Why are we buying books?
This was a suggestion from
I realize that, but it's a suggestion. It doesn't mean that we have to follow through on it. We have plenty of books. Mrs. Momini and I spent Friday, doing a book giveaway at MLK, and I know it was done at the other buildings, and we still have plenty of books. And, kids came through, some took books, some kids did not. Some kids have said, they've had enough books. And, I don't support that we're buying, we're spending money to buy books when we have books. This money could be used for something else.
So what we're gonna do then that money will just go back to the State Department and it'll be reissued through.
Well, why can't we use it for something else?
At this time, what is approved in the grant is approved, we can't amend it.
Why?
That is the regulation. So even when they came down and a lot of students went in, basically these were the list of suggestions that they gave us. So it was mostly books, pencils, things like that, things that students are.
Suggestions versus requirements. Was it required per the grant or just suggested to use the funds towards?
It was just suggestions, so it's either that or we
Or
just
send the money.
or send the money back.
As soon as she finishes, you're next, Mr. Tate.
Yeah, I don't understand. I mean, what grant is this? Why weren't we informed of this prior?
This is through title. See, one of the big things that we have in title, we have a lot of people that we haven't been able to hire. And because of that, we have a lot of funds that's in there that is just sitting there that we won't be able to spend this year. And so I know we've stated a couple of times that money, I think it's upwards of $1 million, just over $1 million that we're going to have to return to the State Department because of that. So this will be 100 and something, just over $100,034 that we will not have to return.
Send back.
So when did they make this suggestion? Last week?
No, actually, it was mid-May, I think maybe the end of May, sometime around there.
So if we would have been informed in mid-May, then we could have said, like right now, we don't want the money going for books because we have so many books. Let's use this for something else.
Well, I guess timing is everything. So we have the means, and I guess what we can do is start planning, making some ways to plan so that the board would have some input on how we do utilize that money. So it was after, I think it was after the board meeting. So if I had planned it well enough, we could have had this in front of you in April so that you could have input on how you could utilize that money.
Mr. Lindsay, if you would, please.
Just the problem is that the Title I budget process, it's really set in stone. It's supposed to be set in stone in January. You do your first budget actually in July, and then by January, the final budget's supposed to be done. She made huge give, she was very generous to us to allow us to go again in May and make some additional changes, but she would not allow a lot of the areas where there was huge amounts of money left for supplies. So what happened is the grant wasn't properly planned at the beginning.
I realize that, but I've sat here and we have said we have got books galore, buildings closing, library books, books that were in the classroom. We're still getting books donated by Feed the Children. We don't need to buy any more books, to give away until we have exhausted the humongous supply of books that we have.
Maybe the Maybe the kids that we have don't want 1950 vintage books that we do have.
But they aren't, Mr. Mitchell, they aren't, they're brand new.
Could we, one at a time, please? Who was next? I believe, trustee Maloney.
Okay, number one, I know these books are already in district. They've already arrived, correct? Yes, because they were sitting in central administration the other day. Okay, I know this is a pet peeve of mine. But here we are, we're at a work session with a staff report that apparently, I don't know if you want us to vote on it tonight or not, because it's presented as a staff report, I assume yes. Yeah, I know kids don't want 1950s vintage books, but I have spent the last 6 months sorting out library books, a high percentage of which are brand new, never been read. So I've got concern about that, and I understand using the money versus giving it back. To all of a sudden find out we need to hire a teacher for 30 hours or 35 hours a week, and then to say yay or nay without hearing a little bit more about this program. Such this person is going to work 35 hours a week. What does that look like? What does their day look like? Are they really going to put in 35 hours a week? If it's being served with a lunch is only certain times of the day. What is it, 2-hour time slot for lunch each day? So where are all these other hours coming from that this teacher is going to be doing? I need a better picture of what this teacher is going to be doing.
Hey, Ms. Robinson, or if you would answer that concern, please.
I can give you a better picture. I'll put that in writing. It is not just during that lunchtime, but it is at that particular park. And so there are parks throughout the week, so they can't go to every park every day, but they will be at a park for a certain given time. And it'll be beyond that lunch period or that snack period that they have. So I'll outline for you what that date might look like.
So it'll be a specific schedule for each park?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, throughout the week.
I'm sorry, Mr. Taylor has stated, you'll yield to Mr. Mitchell, thank you.
I think that I read somewhere or heard somewhere that through Sodexo, there was going to be some programming that was associated in the parks with the lunch program. So this would not be just a 2-hour lunch and gone type situation, that there'll be programming in the park sites.
Could you repeat that question?
Sodexo.
Sodexo. I know there's a summer impact program, so that may be what you're referring to, that is happening with the Boys and Girls Club. And they're going to do that part of the park as
But
well.
not in conjunction with this?
No.
Okay.
But we'll definitely be there during that time. And I don't know if Ms. Page, do you have anything to add about the summer programming in the parks or anything like that?
Right now, we're just scheduled to be out there for lunch between 11 and 12:30 and snacks from 2 to 3.
So we just get a breakdown of what the teachers are doing for the 30-hour period. We can get that breakdown, Mr. Taylor.
So I'm fine with it either way, because the conference we went to, remember earlier this year, talked about the title dollars and how if they were not allocated properly, they will be taken back. So we understand that, because I was there with the state when they said it. So I don't have a problem. I think what I do have a problem with, we don't need to give this money to a teacher. Let's give this to some high school seniors, right? Let them go out there and do that work. It doesn't have to be a teacher. A teacher don't have to do this, because if you look at Sodexo, they got summer folks, right? Working in the parks, providing the snacks and the lunches, for example, right? A lot of those people may be their food service workers. So it doesn't have to be a teacher, but I agree that we need to give the money away so that we don't get it taken. But it doesn't have to be a teacher. You could break that salary down for some high school seniors or juniors that are coming back to the high school.
Now I'll have to get approval on it, so I'm going to email her now.
Okay. Because I thought that, that's a pretty good idea.
Any more comments?
Yes.
Trustee Maloney.
But the good thing about, if we're gonna do this and having a teacher and it is organized well, they can help students with their reading skills, and they are trained to help students with reading skills. And that's what I'm kind of looking for in this. If they're gonna be working 35 hours a week, is contact hours with actually working with the students and developing their reading skills.
So to give Ms. Robinson some direction, because if there's a concern with the teacher and the payment, do we want a teacher? Do we want a student? I mean, we need to give her some concise directions, because again, both suggestions are good. Students earning some money, having the skills to help with the reading, but one suggestion was it was too much for the teacher, so we need to not have Ms. Robinson confused with what a directive that we're asking her to go. Mr. Taylor.
So I'm just gonna go back a little bit, 30 years ago. And I used to be, we had DECA, Distributive Education Councils of America. We had BHAS, Business Opportunity Councils of America. And so I was a part of that. So I was stationed at the YMCA day camp, right? We didn't have a grown-up doing that stuff. So I was a day camp counselor, reading, and I was a junior, and I did it my senior year as well. So I think we don't necessarily need a teacher. Anybody can sit and read to a person. Because when little kids come out to a park, right, you don't have to be a 40, 30, 20-year-old to read to them. I think that if we look back at me being a day camp counselor, teaching students to do archery, ride a bicycle, story times and all that, I was a high school student. And I was not a grown-up. We don't need a grown-up to give out books. That's just me. I mean, anybody can give out a book.
Yes. Trustee McGowan.
What did you have in mind for this teacher to do versus, certified teacher versus a not? What was your vision, if you could share?
Well, first, the teacher would have to sort through the books, get those books organized, make sure that they are there, maybe plan an activity, but definitely be there during the hard times to read to the students and have a reading time in the park. So the books do not come sorted in. I have a gamut of books of K through 12 books. So they'll have to get those books together for distribution in parks.
How many books do we have? How many students do you anticipate? How much support systems will be provided for just one teacher? Could we also get a breakdown of who's going to be assisting? Because one person may not be able to deal with 30, 40 kids. So could we, if the board wants, get a total breakdown of what that would look like?
Just for my clarification, what you're looking at is like when the kids go to the library and they have story time, and the librarian sits down and reads a couple books and the kids are sitting there.
And they'll have to also be there as kids are taking, looking through the books to get whatever book they're wanting to take.
At their level.
Yes, and then adding one teacher, adding another person is going to increase that salary, that amount there as well. So then that would be, I don't know if that would be a concern by anybody else. If students do it, who is supervising the student, who's making sure that the student gets the materials that they need to go to the park. And maybe not the person has to be there, but maybe we might need some supervision a little bit. So I'll ask her for that, if we could have kind of define some of those parameters of the money, and maybe have a teacher there just a little part of the time, but also include students in that as well.
One more question, I'm sorry. So
Yes.
if this is over 100 grand, Mr. Lindsay, how much more do we have to get back, for example? You don't have to be precise. So if we're spending 100-some thousand for this program, how much more will we have to set back?
I don't remember exactly what the total was.
What happened there?
So let's spend it all.
The problem is that we can't. The problem is that so much of this was tied to people, and those people haven't materialized, that we lost out. And the chance to redirect probably would have been back in November, December, January, instead of end of year, and she would not allow us to make that wholesale of change. In fact, some people changes that were made in November, she only allowed from that date going forward. She wouldn't let them recast those dollars. I wasn't involved with the last one, but the number is significant, and the allocation for next year has been reduced some too.
Okay.
Another $300,000 or $400,000 less in title.
And then one other thing for title is that when you receive those funds, it's supposed to be used within that school year.
So she's only allowing us to use it.
Because we're doing the summer reading program, because the program goes to, we can spend through September, because they're in district and can be used for the summer reading program, she's allowing it.
So I'm saying allow some more people, you can have a person at each park. And I'm just guessing, and then you can use more dollars.
Yeah, well, she had, the dollar amount, I believe, was $154,000, that's all that was available for that piece. She disallowed everything else in that area. Then, just so you know too, on the plan going forward for the next year's title, we're having the work session next week. And then they won't allow us to open up our title application until after July 1st because we're potentially taking a building or two offline. So we have to wait until those buildings go off the system. So the plan is that we're going to have the consultant come back and spend an entire day with us. And we're actually going to do the application while she sits with us. So that in the meantime, our work session is going to be making sure we have every dollar accounted for, whether we can do more parapro, whatever that works out to be. So that there's planning on the front side so it can be executed throughout the school year and not have any issues at the end of the year. We're way too late. I mean, doing this stuff in May and June was just water was gone under the bridge already. So.
And the other big part of this is having the leadership teams involved with that process as well. So the money is really supposed to be identified or allocated through the school improvement plan as dictated by the leadership teams and what the needs are of those particular schools. So that's another piece that we'll have involved with the planning process, so that whatever's in that agreement, in that application, the principals and the teams will spend it and stick to it.
Yes, trustee.
Well, one of the observations that I've made that during this planning process, it seems that the planning was more geared to physicians and adults than it was on the kids. So as you plan for this next year, I would hope that we're orientated on the students and not providing salaries and jobs for adults.
And yes.
I must have quite a while to stand up.
Okay, then you can address the floor.
Okay, so Mr. Lindsay, the salary and benefits and the books pretty well takes the whole $150,000.
Yeah, I think that was the plan, was to try and use as much.
I was a reading teacher, not a math teacher, so I'm thinking this. Okay, when I do the math, and I assume, Mrs. Robinson, these are paperback books?
They're all sorts of books, not just paper, they're hard.
Okay, but at an average cost of $8 a book, which a lot of your paperback books are only $4 or $5, you're talking over 16,000 books to be managed. So whether we go with a teacher or students, you're gonna have to have a teacher involved in some way to sort and level and know what to do with those 16,000 books. That's a lot of books to make sure they get to the students at the levels that will benefit them.
If you would give us a breakdown of how that's going to be managed during that time before the vote next week. Does that satisfy the questions? Thank you. You're not done, Ms. Robinson.
So next we have the MHSAA membership resolution. This is for presidencies to sign, so this is just the annual membership fee that we have. And then the last item for me is the.
Could you read that to the board?
Yeah. It's just the Okay, so this is, the presidency has asked me to read the membership resolution. So Benton Harbor High School, which is under the direction of the Board of Education and governing body, Benton Harbor Area Schools, City of Benton Harbor, County of Marion, State of Michigan are hereby enrolled as members of the High School Athletic Association, Incorporated Nonprofit Association, and are further enrolled to participate in the approved inter-school athletic activities sponsored by said association. The Board of Education governing body hereby delegates to the superintendent or his or her designee the responsibility for the supervision and control of said activities, and hereby accepts the Constitution and bylaws of said association and adopts as its own the rules, regulations, and interpretations as minimum standards, as published in the current handbook as the governing code under which the said school shall conduct its program of interscholastic athletics, and agrees to primary enforcement of said rules, regulations, interpretations, and qualifications. In addition, it is hereby agreed that schools which host or participate in this association's meets and tournaments shall follow and enforce all tournament policies, procedures, and schedules. The authorization shall be effective August 1st, 2018, and shall remain effective until July 31st, 2019, during which the authorization may not be revoked.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson.
And then the last item is just consent items, would be the children. Okay, so under the consent item, we have school supplies, and we have, yes, more books given by the children. As confirmed by trustee Mommy and trustee McGowan.
How many books are 166 pounds worth?
You guys might be the experts at the estimate, and let us know.
I'll wait some.
Okay. So that will be up for approval next week.
Okay, thank you. Is there any questions? At this time, item 6 on the agenda is a closed session, attorney-client privilege with Attorney John Graves. I will entertain a motion at this time to, to leave the open session and go into closed session. Ms. Robinson would like to read something before we accept that motion, please.
So board, I know you were, wanting information regarding the graduation. So I did just text the attorney, Tim Gardner, and ask if the board had the authority to add to the current policy for those who are lacking a credit or less and allow them to walk and finish the requirements in the summer. So that was the question I asked. So his response was, and I'll just read what he stated. The principal can allow the student to walk across the stage conditioned on that student completing the final graduation requirements at summer school. Otherwise, the board would have to amend the policy language to address this issue and allow students that do not have enough credits to walk for graduation. If the board policy does not give the principal any discretion, the board could suspend the policy and allow the students to walk for graduation.
And I would say that's policy.
Okay.
So that's under our bylaws, and that's under function 0130, policy 0130.1. So you can always modify, suspend, amend any policy. You don't need me over to do that the board can do that. And to allow, and I'd just like to read this before we go into closed session because this is something I looked up. So in California, students shy of credits allowed to walk at graduation. Up until now, in the time, students who didn't complete the required credits for high school graduation couldn't walk across the stage with his or her class. State of California, School Board Association, in line with state law, they changed it to allow them to walk, complete their credits in the summer, but they allowed them to walk. And one example was, we've never done this before, and then it goes on to say, if it was your kid, who's been planning for this all their life, yada, yada, it's distressful to the family. So California, even the whole state, has changed that law in order to allow you to walk when you minus the small amount of credits that these families are. So I would hope that we would allow them to walk as well.
I also did get a text because we're on live video. It says, when I graduated from college, I was allowed to walk in May, even though I was 3 credits short. I took them over the summer and officially graduated in August. And the individual that is watching said, just my 2 cents. So I believe, I still need to entertain a motion to go out of open session, and I believe that we've had, word from our attorney. And yes, Ms. Mom, will you take the motion?
I got the motion.
Oh, okay, would you read the motion, please?
Yes. Pursuant to Section 8H of the Michigan Open Meetings Act, I move that the Board of Education go into closed session for the purpose of reviewing attorney-client privileged communications.
Okay, I do have a resolution that has been read for the consideration of the board to go into closed session, and I will entertain a support.
Support.
I do have a motion and a support. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mrs. McGowan?
Yes.
Mrs. Momini? Yes. Ms. Seats?
Yes.
Thank you, everybody.
So, thank you, Madam Secretary. Motion carries. We will now be leaving the open session and going into closed session. After that time, we will be coming out because we do have other business to conduct. Thank you. Mr. Mitchell wants a 5-minute break for all the people. Thank you.
I start laughing.
Like to entertain a motion to return back into the closed session and go into our regular session.
So,
I need a support. I have a motion and a support. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Mrs. Momini, yes. Ms. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
And Ms. Sings?
Yes, thank you. Next item on the agenda is board business, the old policy, 5111 update.
So, Board, I am bringing this to you for your review. Our district has experienced an enrollment increase of students between the end of this February count day up to this point. For students who have had some discipline concerns in other schools. And we did receive a copy of a letter that one student received stating that he or she could not return to school and that they should enroll into their local school district. So with that, we went and searched another school district's Neola policy regarding this. And we found, in local ones, so one within our county, we highlighted information in their policy, which who also uses Neola. So what we are doing, we're receiving students who are on the brink of suspension, and they are coming to Mid Harbor area schools the last three weeks of school to enroll. And right now, our policy does not state or specify anything like in section F. So we are, at this point, have to accept and enroll all schools. I'm asking for the addition of item F in our policy.
If the board has an opportunity to look at that before our regular meeting, please take it under consideration for vote and support next week. Any questions right now at this time?
Long overdue.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Next item on the agenda, collaboration partnership agreement. Is there any update, Ms. Mullen?
Well, we still need to complete our assignment for doing the policy and procedures for the board, the district, and the partners to follow. And that's going to take contributions from the entire board to get that completed. So they've been patient so far, but I don't want to push our luck on that. And you said it was 10A or something like that. So we need to do that.
Any questions concerning partnership, collaboration, partnership agreement?
Is this something where we have to have a special meeting to accomplish it?
Yeah, I think we do need a special meeting. Yes.
Or as quickly as we can work?
Yeah, we're gonna have at least an hour for it. And we got some suggestions on what to put into it, but we need to agree on it. And then Dr. Teasley did buy us some books. Can't remember, about improving board, not leadership, but of creating a better board or something. I can't remember the name of it is. She did send us a text today that saying that she had bought us some books.
Any more questions for Ms. Momney? If not,
Why shouldn't we do this now?
to
Pick a date,
do what?
so what she said needs to be done, and the timeline is drawing near.
No, I realized that we need to do it, and I'm saying we need to do it, but I wonder if we want to wait until after our June 14th. Which I don't know if you've announced that yet or not. If not, it's a secret, though. That we need to do what strategic planning?
I believe the board should, if you would have Ms. West to send out some requests, for a strategic planning session for the partnership agreement. If you get a consensus on the date and the time from the board, please. If that satisfies you, Ms. Mom?
Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions? Item number 9 on the agenda, Ms. Robinson, partnership agreement update, if there's any.
And this is just the monthly partnership agreement update, so you can peruse through that.
Item number 10 on our agenda, board president's comments, and there is none. Interim superintendent comments at this time.
I do want to make sure that everyone has everything ready for graduation on Friday in our high school graduation. Also remember that the Dream Academy's graduation is Thursday, and that ACA is having their ceremony as well on Wednesday. And I know the parent left, but I do want to applaud their efforts, the mom and dad who came before the board this evening in support and advocating for their child, and not only their child, but their children as well.
Thank you. Could you give us the times that the board needs to be present before the graduation and the times of the graduation, superintendent? What time is the
So
board
Friday, the high school graduation is at 6 o'clock, but is there a special, so Sue's going to pull it up for us.
Graduation reception is from 5 to 5:45.
And where is it located?
Here.
Here in this room?
Yeah.
Thank you. And could you put that on our calendar, if you would, please? Okay, thank you. ACA, what is the time for ACA and what time?
They're all
is the board?
6 to 8.
They're all 6 to 8, so is there a reception? Or
I've not been told.
not been told? Okay, so ACA 6 to 8, thank you. Thursday. Any questions from the board?
That Wednesday?
ACA is Wednesday.
ACA is Wednesday.
ACA is Wednesday.
Dream is
Dream is
Thursday.
Dream is Thursday, okay, if you will put that on our
And
calendar.
it is on, it should
I
be
do
on your
appreciate it.
calendar.
All right, thank you. Any other comments, superintendent? Board members, we'll start with, Ms. Momini,
No comments.
Ms. McGowan,
No comments.
Mr. Taylor,
No comments.
Mr. Mitchell.
What was our final decision on the parent that?
Our final decision on
On their child graduating?
I believe she gave her the attorney's opinion that there is no restriction and that the principals would have to give permission for those students to be able to, I believe, if not this.
Correct. So what I am going to do is contact Mr. Adams tonight. I'm also going to have the parents sign a document, all the parents who are in that field sign a document, letting them know what our attorney has said, and also letting them know that they have their child has to enroll and attend the summer school program in order to receive their diploma, so they're gonna have to finish that out. And then also, we'll have language for the board if that is consideration for amending the policy next week.
Please make sure you keep a copy of that information you got from the attorney, so we have documentation of what he said.
Okay.
No question.
No questions,
No
no comments. Okay, thank you. Under other, is there any other business from this board at this time?
I would just like to also state with that graduation requirement, what they did in California was when they redid their board policy, you put the superintendent down or the principal, but they said the superintendent has the discretion to allow students on track to complete their credits over the summer to participate in the ceremony. So that's something the board could think about adding into the policy, right? or that gives the superintendent of schools or the principal of that school, high school, that discretion. And that's what they did in California. It's California School Boards Association and the California State Education Code.
And any other comments under other board announcements or reminders?
I just want to make a comment about Willie Wilson passing last Friday. Longtime Mount Bet Harbor employee, former athletic director, former football coach and everything. Going to be missed by many. He was beloved by many. I do believe there is a memorial service at the same time that graduation is taking place on Friday night and that the funeral is taking place on Saturday. Thoughts and prayers to the family.
Yeah, Ms. Robinson was gonna read
Okay.
that. If you would.
So, yes, trustee Montgomery, correct. So 6:00 p.m. is memorial service, Friday, June 8th. And that will be at AME Church on Crystal. And then the funeral service is, June 9th, which is Saturday at 11:00 a.m. Also at AME Church. And that time of the funeral service is 11:00.
And we're preparing a resolution.
Yes.
All right, thank you so much. At this time, I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Have a motion to adjourn. I need a support.
Support.
Have a motion and a support. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Okay, Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Ms. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Mamini? Yes. Mr. Dees?
Yes. Thank you. Motion carries. This meeting is adjourned at 8:29 p.m.